Righty. This is Jerry Diamond with How to Get Out of Babylon. Flat Earth Homeland. Welcome aboard, David. I don't believe the Earth is a ball speeding through space. Amen. So, yeah, look at my Flat Earth Homeland channel. And, Ozark Plateau. Refugee, no. Remnant Relocation Association Headquarters. Oprah. O-P-R-R-R-R-R-A-H. So, 25, chapter 25. We're about a little over 1/3 of the way through it. There's like 71 chapters and an epilogue. So, yep, pretty amazing. 75. Oh no, 75. When I finish this, we'll be 1/3 of the way through as far as the chapter numbers go, and not quite, page-wise, no. So, all right. Like I said, we're going to be seeing more and more situations that, be nice to talk about. So, let's get started here. On the way home, Jess mentioned to Mark and Jim that some of the other neighborhood women had heard them talk about the shooting lessons they were to have after the meeting. She said that a couple of them were also interested, and that she and Lisa had invited them to come over. Jim said that was no problem, as teaching 6 or 7 wasn't much more work than teaching 4. When they got home, Mark went out to check the water temperature on his shower. Since the water had been heating all day in the sun, it was very warm. Mark figured it was a good thing he hadn't painted the barrels black, or the water may have been too hot to bathe in. He could paint them later in the season if the days shortened up enough that it became necessary. George had gone across the street to check on the guys who were finishing the tilling, and Mark walked over to see how it was going. When he got across the street, he could see that only one tiller was running. George and some other men were bent over the other one. "What happened?" Mark asked. Sorry. George looked up, and the look on his face wasn't good. "Looks like we broke the drive chain. Can we fix it?" "Maybe, but it chewed up the gears pretty good when it broke. We really need new parts." "We can try to find some, but I wouldn't hold my breath," Mark warned. "If we can't, where does that leave us?" "Well, it blows our plans to be finished with this lot by day after tomorrow. We were planning on starting the next lot after this, but it'll take at least a full week with only one tiller. We may want to get the individual gardens going first. I just hope you can get that tractor from the Christmas tree farm running. That'll solve all of our problems." "I hope so too, George. We're going to take this thing down to Chaparro's and see what he thinks about fixing it. I'll be back at the house after that." When they went down to John's for the meeting that evening, there must have been at least 300 people at the meeting. He wondered what the population of Silver Hills was up to. George reported the bad news about the tiller, and Chaparro said that he might be able to fix it. Mark told the group that he was going to look at a tractor tomorrow and see if he could get it to run. Mark was thinking he could use some help with the mechanics. Maybe one of the newcomers had some experience that could help them. He asked the question, and a man held up his hand and introduced himself. His name was Bill Evans. He was Scott Simmons' brother-in-law, and he'd worked as a mechanic in a garage when he was younger. Mark asked him if he'd be willing to go look at the tractor tomorrow. He agreed, and Mark told him to be at his house at 8 o'clock. John then brought up the topic of limiting the amount of people in the subdivision again. Although some people agreed with him, the majority did not. John became visibly hostile. "So what are we going to do? Let people move in here until we have no room to move or grow enough crops? How many do you all think we can support? 1,000? 10,000? Mark stepped up to the front and spoke. "John, I think we all understand your concern, and you're right in that we cannot support an unlimited number of people. But shouldn't it be up to each family to decide how many people they want to be responsible for? Besides that, the more people we have, the more work we can get done, and there's a larger pool of skills to benefit from." "Hear, hear," someone in the crowd shouted. "You tell them, Mark," someone else said. "Well, I think we need to come to a decision on this. George said we can only feed 500, and with one of the tillers broken, maybe we can't even do that, John said angrily. John, that was an estimate. He based that off only the empty lots. George, do you have any better info for us? We put a pencil to it, and the best the committee can figure with the long growing season and good soil we have here, each acre planted should conservatively support 15 people. We might even stretch that to 20, but 15 is a safe number. And the tiller, if we can't fix it, will slow us down, but a tractor puts us ahead of the game. But you don't have a tractor yet. You, of all people, George, you know you shouldn't count your chickens before they hatch. If John was trying to get a rise out of George, it didn't seem to work. That's true, John, but we'll turn all of the ground over by hand with spades if that's what it takes. Maybe so, but who knows how long it would take. I think we need to at least put a temporary hold on population growth until we have a better handle on the food situation. Plus, it's getting harder and harder to get everyone to the store, right, Manny? Mark could tell from the look on Manny's face that he didn't like being pulled into this. Well, it is getting a little more difficult to work out the schedule, but with more trucks now, especially if Mark can get that old international harvester going, we should be able to take everyone at least to 2 stores a week. Even so, we need to get an idea of what we can do before things get out of hand. I make a motion that we temporarily limit each house to 10 people, or if it's already over 10, to its current number. Everyone just looked around to see if anyone would confirm the motion. I second it, a voice finally called out from the back. All those in favor? A few meek ayes were heard. All those opposed? The noes were strong enough to knock a truck over. Wait a minute. Only the people who live here can vote, John challenged. We all live here, someone angrily called out and was acknowledged with some hostile yas. I mean only the people who actually own a home here. That's not fair. If we're living here and working here, we should get a vote too, one of Manny's relatives yelled. This was going downhill in a hurry, Mark thought. I'll tell you what, how about we just let the homeowners vote and see if the results are any different? If they are, then we can talk about it some more. If not, then all the arguing is for naught. The crowd seemed agreeable to trying Mark's solution. Okay then. All homeowners in favor of John's motion? There are a few scattered ayes that there were perhaps not quite as meek as before. All those opposed? Even though the vote was closer, it was still obvious the motion hadn't passed. Mark could see that John and a few of the others weren't happy. Perhaps there's a compromise we can come to. Mark wanted peace. George told me that he and the gardening committee are going to talk about getting started on the individual gardens next. I think that's a reasonable approach. Does everyone agree? The response was unanimously yes. How about we ask them to present us with a plan to do that tomorrow night? But until we know how much of the empty lots we're going to be able to use, we don't count on them. Every homeowner agrees to house only the number of people he can support on his own land. Remember that we may be down to turning the soil by hand if things don't go well, so don't plan on the tractor or even a tiller. In other words, if you invite people to live at your place, you are responsible for them, not the community. Can I make that a motion? I second it, several people called out at the same time. All in favor? The response was deafening. All opposed? No one made a sound. All right then. Does anyone have anything else? Mark asked. Everyone was either shaking their heads or shrugging their shoulders. Then I guess we're done. David and Sam will pump water for you in a few minutes. The shower water is ready. It's really warm today. I'd like to give the guys who tilled today first shot at it. After that, I guess it's first come, first served. And one last thing. I'd like for the security committee to meet for a few minutes if that's okay with them. Mark didn't even notice he'd taken control of the meeting. Everyone headed off in different directions except for the 5 security committee members. Mark told them that he knew they were going to resume work in the morning, but he asked that they allow him to go check the tractor. They all agreed that the tractor was a priority, and they told him not to worry about it. He told them he felt bad that he wasn't contributing more, and that he especially wanted to apologize to Susan for leaving her to supervise the digging by herself. Don't be silly, Mark. We need that tractor worse than we need another shoveler tomorrow. Ted agreed. She's right, Mark. We have to get our errands run as soon as possible. Like you said the other day, who knows how long we have until the world blows up. Right now, materials are more important than the work. I'm going back to Poth to get the rest of what we need for the fence in the morning. I got enough donations to get everything we need, he informed the group. Mark appreciated the professor not saying that most of the money had come from him. I have a question for John, Susan said. What? John asked as though he shouldn't be bothered. I was wondering if you'd mind running your guard training program by us. Mark was thankful that someone beside him had asked. Why? Because we're a committee. We've run what we're planning by everyone else on the committee. Why shouldn't you let us in on your plans? She asked sincerely. Well, if you must know, we're going to spend the first day doing PT. I need to get these guys into fighting shape. The second day, we're going to learn the M16 weapon system. The third day will be how to stand a post. Then some hand-to-hand training and some small unit tactics. The last day will be review. You're going to do PT all day the first day? Mark asked with his eyebrows raised. Yes, what's wrong with that? John had a little more attitude than Mark liked, but he ignored the sarcasm. Don't you think that's a little excessive? They ran our asses off the first day in the Corps. Yeah, John, but you were what, 18 or 20? These guys are all middle-aged, and most of them have beer bellies, and they won't last 30 minutes, Mark reasoned. I know I can't get them into shape in a day. God, I'm not that stupid. But they need to be ready to fight if we have another incident. This will be a wake-up call for them. Then I'll get them on a daily workout. Mark just rubbed his chin. How is he going to get through to this guy? Chaparro had a question too. John, you said you're going to teach them to use the M16, yes? But these guys don't have M16s. Don't you think it would be better to work with them on their own weapons? Do you want me to do the training or not? It was obvious that John was threatened now. First, you all just let anybody move in here, even if we can't feed them. Then Mark takes over my meeting, and now you don't like the way I'm training the guards. Maybe I should just let you all do everything. John, that's not what we want. We'd like to have some input. We'd just like to have some input into anything having to do with security, just like you do with what we're working on, Ted pleaded. Well, if you want me to do the training, then I'm going to do it the Marine way, because it's the only way I know how. The rest of the group just looked at Mark. He knew they would go along with him. He also knew that John might learn a lesson if he let him have enough rope to hang himself. Okay, John, you do it the way you think is right. If you need any help, just let us know. John sat back in his chair smugly. Mark figured that he thought he'd won. Maybe his way would work, but Mark estimated his program would self-destruct within 2 hours of its launch. Anything else we need to discuss? Chaparro asked. Everyone just shook their heads. See you all in the morning, then. Everyone headed home. When Mark got there, the kids were in the middle of pumping water. Mark checked the shower line. The line was longer than the water would hold out, he figured. After the guys who'd worked that day, the line consisted mostly of women. Maybe he should try to buy some more barrels tomorrow to make another shower or two. He asked the man who'd just come out how the water temperature was, and the answer was a resounding perfect. Mark told the women in the line to watch the water level in the barrels. He said that if it got down too low, not to risk a shower. He smiled evilly as he explained that if one of them ran out of water in the middle of her shower, there would be no choice but to have one of the other women rinse her off with the cold water out of the hose. There was a collective shiver from all the women, and they nodded their heads as if they had just been told the meaning of life. Mark could hear the 22s firing, so he decided to go see how the lessons were going. He wanted to check out his gold cup anyway. He walked down to the empty lot and was shocked when he saw Jim teaching 12 or 15 women to shoot. 2 women were on the line firing the rifles, and the rest were standing behind watching intently. Jim was standing between the 2 shooters, coaching them. When they were done firing their strings, the 2 new shooters came up and took their turns. Mark watched in amazement at how quickly the women caught on. When everyone was done, Jim spoke to the whole group. I'm sorry that I wasn't really prepared for so many of you. We can pick up again tomorrow night. If you don't remember anything else, remember the 4 rules of firearm safety. The women all came up to Jim to thank him and then made their way home. Jess, after thanking Jim, walked up to her husband and told him they wanted him to start a self-defense class for them. He told her that they'd talk about it. Mark walked up to his friend when all the women had left. I thought you were going to have 6 or 7. Me too. It probably would have been more, but some of the women said their friends wanted a shower just a little more than shooting lessons. How many did you have? 14. They all seemed to shoot really well. Women usually do, Jim told his friend. They listen better than men do, and they don't have anything to prove. A man's ego usually gets in his way when it comes to shooting instructions. He wants to prove he already knows all there is to know, and that keeps him from learning. I've noticed the same thing in teaching karate. Funny you should mention that. They were talking about wanting to learn some karate after we finished shooting lessons. Yeah, Jess already warned me. Once we get caught up on some of the work, it shouldn't be a problem. That'll make them happy, Jim observed. And that's the main thing, isn't it? You know what I say, if Mama's not happy, then nobody's happy. Bubba, you said a mouthful. Now, how about we put that fancy new pistol through its paces? You got it. The two friends took turns shooting the gun. The Colt had a few hiccups at first, but after 50 or 60 rounds to break it in, it performed well. It was the most accurate .45 Mark had ever seen. While they were shooting, Mark filled Jim in on the security meeting and John's plan for training the guards. Why did you give in to him? Jim asked. Because he would have quit if we hadn't. This way the guards will probably mutiny on him in the morning and he'll have to change his plan. Maybe it'll teach him to consult us a little more. I wouldn't bet on it. Just thank God we're not in his first group. Now who said a mouthful? Mark grinned. The two men walked back to the house when they finished shooting. Mark noticed that the shower line was noticeably shorter. Sam told him that some of the women toward the back had left when it was obvious there wasn't going to be enough water for them. They all swore to be the first behind the men tomorrow, she said. Mark laughed, and then as he was walking into the house, he saw the other security members, less John, walking up to his home. They walked up to him, and before he could say hello, Susan spoke. Why did you agree to let John do the training the way he wants to? You know that dog won't hunt. Mark smiled big, and she asked another question. What's so funny? She didn't seem amused. I've just never heard a woman use that phrase before. My daddy used to say that all the time. I guess it rubbed off on me, she said with a sheepish smile. That explains it, Mark acknowledged. About John, I let him do what he wants because he's not going to listen to us until he fails. Even then he may not, but I'm hopeful he will. I see your point, Mark, but I'm getting tired of his shit. I think you should have let him quit. Shapara was upset as Mark had ever seen him. I was tempted to, but if this thing's going to work, we need everyone. We may see that, but John doesn't. Why should we do for him what he's not willing to do for others, Ted argued. I know it's hard, but we need to try. If he doesn't come around on his own soon, we'll find a way to get through to him. Okay, Mark, you're right. He's just such an ass sometimes, Susan sighed. By the way, I heard Jim's giving the women shooting lessons. Can I sign up? I'm sure you can. I think he has all he can handle right now, but he's going to do another class after this one. Why don't you go inside and talk to him? Will do. The only woman on the Silver Hill Security Committee turned and headed into the house. You know, Mark, I'd like some lessons too, but not with the girls, Ted admitted. I'm sure we can work something out, Mark answered with a wink. The three men chatted for a few minutes, and then Susan came back out. The visitors excused themselves, and Mark went into the house. David came up to his father. Hey, Dad, guess what today was? What? September 1st, opening day of dove season. Really? I haven't been keeping track of the date too well since the burst. Do you think we can go try to get some birds? David, I know how much you like to go bird hunting, but I don't know how much we're going to be able to do this year. First of all, we have a ton of work to do around here, and second, I don't think we can waste shotgun shells on doves. There just isn't enough meat for the number of shells you have to shoot to make a meal. That may be true for you, Dad, but if I shoot like I did last year, then it's worth it, right? David had finally beaten his old man on the last day of dove season last year. He had limited out 12 birds with just 17 shots. Mark, on the other hand, had shot almost 1.5 boxes of shells and had only killed 7 birds. It was a fact David reminded his father of every time he got a chance. Maybe so. Then can we at least try to go? We'll see. David's shoulders slumped at the answer. We'll see was almost always meant no. He and his sister often complained. Mark had to admit that they were right. In fact, about the only time that answer ended up meaning yes was when Mark felt guilty about using it too often, as he did now. Maybe, Mark thought, if they got caught up on the work a little, they could sneak away for a day of hunting. That's it.